Sometimes when I'm thinking about us, before we got lost and we parted, back to back we would carry on and we'd do anything for what we started. But this time we could break. I'm running dry, everything's the same. We'll try tonight. This time we're not safe and sound, not safe and sound. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah. Sometimes when I'm reasoning about us, I know you got me, it's so effortless. Back to back we would carry on and we'd do anything for what we started. But this time we could break. I'm running dry, everything's the same. We'll try tonight. This time we're not safe and sound, not safe and sound. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me?
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the FPV News. It is August 23rd, 2022, and we're going to keep you up to date on all the stuff in the world of FPV. How you doing, Blunty?
Good, Joshua. How's it going? It's News Day.
Your volume is not right. How? Oh, that's my bad. Try this. How you doing,
Hello,
Blunty?
Hey, I'm doing great.
I pressed the wrong button on the stream deck. Sorry about that. I was going so smoothly. Blunty, without you, this stream might not be happening. I canceled my Monday stream because I fought through it on Sunday, the coughing, and I thought on Monday that I would just, maybe, but I will always show up for the news because even if I'm out, I know you'll carry the whole show.
Hey, I'm happy to be here. So.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here with you. Phantom FPV, guess what? Look what shirt I grabbed from the closet as I ran upstairs to get a clean shirt for the stream. Phantom's in the chat. And I got to tell you, I just turned this way. I kind of wish this was on the front. I mean, I'm not trying to tell you how to make your shirt, but that's such a cool design. When I put it on, I actually put it on facing front. It was like, oh, this is not right. So, I don't know. Just a thought. Good to see you. Tuning you out. Michael Honeychuck.
It looks
I was
like
not talking about me.
It looks like business in the front, party in the back, right? That's the design of the shirt.
A lot of times they'll do a shirt with like a little breast logo here and then a big logo across the back. But I kind of wish I could see it. Anyway. We are going to run down some developments in the world of FPV today. Some information about DJI. Some information about Walksnail. And some information about events happening in the world. I got it. I'm holding it together. But we're going to start, Blunty. We don't have any PSAs this week. No public service announcements of critical importance.
Yeah, nothing showed up. So if there is something out there, we didn't email it to the news at fpvknowitall.com.
Oh, yeah.
So right there at the bottom.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're going to go straight in then to the very first event, which is information about the DJI Avata and the O3 Air Unit release. And I think, Blunty, one of these pieces of information is confirmed and one is a rumor. Is that right?
Pretty much, yeah.
Right.
Well, yeah, basically. So, yeah, the DJI sent out an email, like we expect from all their preview stuff, showing the official release dates. The Avata will be coming on the 25th, which obviously I think we said before it was the 23rd from the Drone XL, and I said I thought that was close. So this is the date I had heard. So the 25th, it's coming pretty soon here.
Yeah.
So in a couple of days, we'll see that Avata launch. And then we've also got a pick from Osita. The people were asking if it'll be available or just announced. And it does look like retailers are getting stock in of the drone bundles. However, we saw that Pro bundle early, and I have not seen that Pro bundle land anywhere. And Osita is saying he does not believe that is a SKU currently.
Now, what's the Pro bundle, Blunty?
The Pro bundle would be with the actual controller. All these come with either a motion control, like the one bundle is either motion control or it's just the drone. So there's no like traditional V2 RC control, the same one that we have on the current DJI FPV drone, that most people are going to want to use because otherwise it's just going to be the motion controller.
And the goggles, this looks like, am I crazy, or does this look like a combo without the goggles? I don't see the goggles on the box. Is that just the other side of the box?
Yeah, there's just a drone. From what we know, there's just a drone bundle. So if you've already got if you've got a DJI FPV potato right now, presumably you'd be able to buy the new drone and then use it, because as far as we know, it's forward compatible.
Yeah. No, the gray FPV controller is forward compatible. So now there are two drones in the world you can fly with that thing, and the V2 goggles, but not the V1. And it's interesting because the V2 goggles will work at 720p. But the new and the V2 goggles, the V2 goggles do work at 810. You're right. It's the V1 810, but the goggles 2, which is the new goggles, will work at 1080 as well.
1080 100 versus 810 120.
Pretty freaking respectable. As we've seen with the Walksnail system, simply having 1080 resolution doesn't necessarily mean that your image looks better, because you got to be able to deliver the bits and deliver the pixels. I think we could probably assume DJI's got it. They're pretty good at this, but we'll have to see. So
it'll be interesting to see what status we get a release in, for sure.
I've talked to a couple stores who say that pre-orders will start on the 25th, but that they don't have stock yet. Now, granted, that was a couple days ago. They may have gotten stock since then. Do we know if they're shipping on the 25th or if that's pre-orders and then they'll start shipping whenever they can?
So that was that Osita picture. So that as far as we know, the stores are getting stock. So that they have stock currently.
Now, a lot of FPV people are going to be interested in picking up the goggles alone without the Avata drone. Do we know anything about that? No.
I've not seen anything about that. Presumably, there'd be not a lot of reason for them to sell the goggles alone. Right. I imagine they will. I imagine they will, but we don't know for sure. Because the other piece of news that we're talking about, which we did discuss before in the leaks, but if you missed that or you've forgotten, the Air unit is not coming with this launch, right?
Yes, so I've heard that.
So the Avata will be out, and then the new goggles will be out. But as far as we know, it will be later in September, like late September is what I'm hearing, for when the OcuSync Air unit actually launches. So
So for FPV people who are, I'm not trying to downplay the Avata. It's probably pretty cool. But for FPV people who are mostly interested in getting a set of goggles and a new Air unit, that is not going to be the 25th. You could get the goggles if you were to buy them in a kit with the Avata, which you may or may not want.
And they may sell standalones. We just haven't seen those SKUs hit retailers yet. Well, but
presumably they will eventually.
Yeah, we just don't know when they're going to land. So,
all right, I'm torn, Blunty, on whether I should try to get the Avata and the new goggles. I feel like on a long enough timeline I will own the new goggles, if only so I can review the O3 Air unit. As far as the Avata goes, the reason I'm torn is I'm sure it will get a lot of views, and I do like views, and I'm vaguely interested in it. But since I'm not part of the release plan, I will not drop a video on the 25th or whenever the embargo lifts, and then I'm going to miss a lot of momentum. I don't know. What is it selling for? The Avata and the goggles?
We don't know yet. I mean, there's a lot of rumor, but I don't have any. Drone XL is just, I think, using guesses, because they've got ranges for some prices and stuff. So I think there's a big range of what we're expecting. I think anywhere from like 400 to 800 for the drone, like
the drone alone, plus 600-ish for the goggles.
Yeah.
I don't even have the V2 controller anymore. I sold my DJI FPV drones and I sold the controller. I must have sold them. I don't know. I don't own them anymore. I know that for sure. So, okay. Well, no, I guess it's probably a no. I don't know.
The other piece of action, or the other piece of DJI news, is that we have an Action 3 we talked about before in the leaks as well. Mm-hmm. And that Action 3 will be coming pretty soon. I don't have an exact date, but I can just tell you that I'm hearing stirring again that is soonish. And that Osita, I forgot to link it, but Osita also posted a picture of an Osmo, the old Osmo, just like we talked about. It'll be the same form factor as the GoPro Osmo Action. So it'll be the bigger
the
style.
DJI Osmo.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
So, and then Osita did confirm that in a post. So.
That's a tough one. The Osmo was an okay action camera. Its major downside was that if I remember right, the stabilization wasn't all that, and the field of view was a little bit narrow. When Rotor Riot did their DJI Osmo, they did a video sponsored, and they were like, guys were flying drones all around while people skateboarded or something. And I was like, did you guys like accidentally set it to linear field of view? Did you guys forget to use super view? And Drew was like, no, that's just the Osmo. I hope that they fix those things, but if it looks anything like the Action 2, it's not going to look that great either.
Well, yeah, the presumption, I think, was that, like, they just dropped the Osmo name, right? But they carried on with Action. So Action 2 was an Osmo Action, but it was just the new version of that in a smaller form factor. So it sounds like we're getting Action 3. They're not taking back the Osmo name, but they're going back to that older form factor, which I think is easier to compete with GoPro on, but it'll be, and it's easier to build, I imagine, than some, like, metal square that you have to attach to another metal square.
But here's the problem. You give me the Action 2, and the Action 2 has worse exposure algorithm and worse dynamic range than a GoPro. The image is just, I think, objectively worse. But it's got an ultra-wide field of view. That's pretty cool. It's super small, super light, and super durable. I'm like, okay, there are people out there who love it. If they go to a camera that's basically a worse GoPro, then why wouldn't I just buy a GoPro? I mean, obviously we can't judge that.
I think they're trying to compete. They're doing Hasselblad, so they think that they've got all this camera tech, right? And they're going to use in-house. That's to me, that's the whole idea internally. That's the discussion they're having around the table. Is like, we own Hasselblad. Like, we can do this. Put this in a fucking box and beat GoPro. Just do it.
That's what surprised me so much about the Action 2. Because DJI clearly knows how to make a good camera. The image from the gosh darn Air unit camera, the onboard 1080 recording, in many ways looks better than the image from the Action 2. And it's like, DJI, what did you get wrong about the Action 2? How did you screw that up? So they know how to do it. It just seems like when they try to make an action camera, they don't manage to pull it off so far. Yeah.
I guess we'll see what comes out of the Action 3. But
yeah.
Potato 10-bit color. I mean, that's exciting, right?
10-bit color is exciting. I like that.
Yeah.
All right. So, that's what we got from DJI. I feel like at $1,300 or $1,400, I feel like it is a clear money loser for me to buy that and make the video.
You resell the drone, right?
Yeah, you could resell the drone. You'd lose a little money. And I am going to get the goggles eventually, one way or the other.
Yeah.
I don't know.
You just sign the drone or put it in your giveaway, right? Whatever your giveaway budget is, you slot it in the giveaway budget.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'll think about it.
Okay.
Next up, we have news about the FAA. And no, it doesn't remote ID. There's no news about remote ID. No, we talked about that. We got part 108. And Blunty, people are going to think this is a typo. Isn't it part 107? What's part 108?
Yeah, so we now have part 108. That's the new rules that we are looking to come into fruition.
More
from the
bullshit restrictions that the FAA is cramping our freedoms.
In some ways, but what part 108 really does, it's part of the Beyond Visual Line of Sight rulemaking committee. So we talked a little bit. If you guys didn't see it, we talked to Dave Messina, and you put out that video on your channel, and we had a good discussion with him about some of the stuff. And one of the things he mentions in the remote ID talks is that he's on the BVLS ARC committee, and basically the ARC is just a rulemaking committee that tries to develop rules and regulations for new things that they're going to have. So basically the FAA is like, look, we need rules for Beyond Visual Line of Sight. Somebody's got to do this. So they got a bunch of people together, and a bunch of people got in a room and argued together a bunch and developed rules. And these are those rules. And the idea of these part 108 is really not more restrictions, though in some cases it will be. In most of the cases, it's sort of ironing out things we've been confused about or that have not been like clear in the rules that are going to have to be clear moving forward, right? So one of those things is, sort of a question of, who has the right of way, right? Like right now we're supposed to yield to all manned aircraft, no matter what. Like that's the rule.
Unmanned aircraft must yield.
Yeah, and so if you think about moving forward, like, is that realistic for integrating drones into the future? Like, should UAS always have to yield forever, no matter the elevation, no matter anything that they're doing, right? And the BVLS, carves out part for that. So it basically says, if they're broadcasting ADS-B or transition awareness, then yes, we have to avoid them. If they're not broadcasting, it is no longer our responsibility to avoid them. They have to avoid us. And if we're operating below 500 feet or within 100 feet of a structure, they also have to avoid.
Now that's interesting because that starts to sound a lot like shielded operations.
Yes, so that's part of the idea here, is to carve out a spot so that there is a safety net, right, that we can live inside of. That while these rules build up around us, all these remote ID and other pieces, and eventually maybe the UTMs we talked about, internet management, all these things that could happen, right? We want to carve out spaces for us. And one of those spaces is going to start to be the shielded operation part of the BVLS laws that we're getting.
Yeah. So what you're saying is that this has potential to carve out some BVLOS allowances, which is useful because BVLOS includes long range. I mean, obviously, when we talk about BVLOS, the number one thing that is in the FAA's mind is like drone delivery and so forth, creating an infrastructure where you can have that kind of thing happening on a larger scale without interfering with manned aviation. Fine. And we think that's shitty and it threatens us and we have bad feelings about that because we just want to do our thing. But BVLOS also includes flying a long distance wing, and it also includes flying FPV with the goggles down. And these are things that are currently not legal. And these are ways in which it is possible to move forward and have them become legal. And I know there's a lot of people out there. I mean, I saw it in the comments of my remote ID video. By the way, I want to say, Blunty, thank you so much for your help on the remote ID video. I know that you didn't actually ask many questions during the interview, but you and I and Dave talked for 45 minutes before the interview, and you came up with the original list of questions and sort of outline for the interview. I was like, hey, you got any questions that we could ask him? And then you just threw me this great outline, and I was like, oh, goddamn, that's half the work. So I really appreciate your contribution there. We saw that these negative comments from people who are like, F this all. And if your attitude is F this all, then by all means. I mean, I get it. I still think there's a lot of value in my theory is that you don't always have to obey the law, but if you break the law, it's good to know which laws you're breaking. And it's good to know that, like we could use cannabis as an example. Before cannabis was legal or recreational in a lot of states, there were a lot of people who smoked cannabis, and it was good to know about the progress of the laws.
Yes.
And that same thing is happening here. The laws may be moving in a direction we don't like, but in some ways the laws may move in a direction that's better for us. And whether you say F the whole thing or whether you want to fly completely legally or you're somewhere in between, there's a lot of value in knowing and trying to make headway of any kind. That's what I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree with that. I mean, it's inevitable. The point here is that we're carving out a space that we can be in. Like if this isn't written out, then we just don't get these rights. That's the way I'm looking at this. Right? We're going to get blanketed over because UAS is going to get regulated. So these are just positive to me because these are ways to find a future for us to continue to do what we're doing. And anybody who wants to do it compliantly, or at least partially compliantly, and stay out of the, compliantly enough to not bother anybody, will be able to do that. Right. I think that's part of the idea here. One of the other things that people are upset about from this, I'll just mention, is that this does recommend that there's a new rating for your pilot certificate. So like when you get your, like if you go and apply for recreational or 107, there might be an extra thing that you would have to get to be able to do those BVLOS. And so they don't like that, hey, there's a new license I have to have. But that license is sort of like, again, carving out a space that you can now live inside of the law, which to me is positive. Because, again, we're going to have to do this regardless. The other thing, just want to mention one more thing, is that it also defines acceptable level of risk. So people are a little concerned about this, but to me this makes sense because there's been a lot of arguments about nobody has done a safety analysis, right? And then there's a lot of other arguments about like, how can you even do one? There's not enough data, like there's not enough flights there. How do you collect that data? Nobody's doing data analysis. The collection isn't proper. Like there's not documented. There's so many pieces to it, right? That you can't really get good data. So one of the things they define here is okay, we just are going to say there's an acceptable level of risk. And that acceptable level of risk is where we're going to live and what we're going to call UAS. And then at that acceptable level of risk, we're going to collect data under the laws you're going to allow us to use these devices in. And then we're going to build a history of UAS and show it's, how risky it is. Like we're going to, just like traditional aviation has a whole history and analysis and everything of it, we're going to do the same thing for UAS over time, right? That's the idea.
Yeah. Interesting. I think a lot of people are going to be hesitant about giving that data and them getting that data, or how they're going to use that data. I think about the people who accused Dave Messina and the FPV Freedom Coalition of selling out or some variant of that, and I really don't agree with that. It's like, let's say you've got this government body that is going to come up with this law or this regulation that is going to take away something that you think is valuable and that you think it's not right that they take it away. Okay, let's stipulate. I think everybody in the room agrees with that, and that's going to happen. And you can either be in the room and try to have a voice, or you can be outside of the room shouting on the street. Now, even if the person who's in the room accomplishes nothing, it's still valuable to have them there, and maybe they accomplish some things. And I think that's what we're seeing with the FAA and like the FPV Freedom Coalition.
As I mentioned a little bit in the remote AD video I've talked about here before, I have experience in cannabis, dealing with lawmakers and people who enforce the laws in cannabis in multiple departments. I worked with, it's not just cannabis, right? So it's like we work with Marijuana Enforcement Division, Excise and License, Fire Department, police, like basically the Department of Agriculture, basically anyone who would be involved with any kind of anything, right? And every single group of them, every single person I talked to, even the total assholes, appreciated learning my opinion because it could inform their moving forward. And it made my life easier to give them my opinion and share it and move forward with things. We got changes in the law because of direct discussions I had with inspectors who changed how they were interpreting the law because they understood how it was being put into practice. Like this is something where like a lot of people were like, fuck the inspectors, fuck the law, like do everything you can to avoid them. Don't follow any of the regulations. Do what you've always been doing. Hide everything you're doing. Like there's that attitude is very prevalent in cannabis. Like don't let them regulate it. It should always be free. It'll never happen. Like all these kind of things. But there's a realistic point of view that like a lot of us have to take, which is like, this is going to happen. Well, and we have to be a part of it. And we have to find a way to find common ground and develop it better and make it like sustainable for everyone.
But I would slightly change what you said there, which is that we don't have to be a part of it. I mean, there are people who will say, I'm not going to be a part of this. I'm having nothing to do with this. I'm going to break these rules. And if they catch me, they can come and get me. And that mindset, I feel like there's value in that. If everyone just said, I will comply with whatever the law says, I think the world would be a worse place. But I think that the rebels also need to acknowledge that there is value in this quote unquote sellouts going into the room and saying, I know I'm not going to get everything I want. I know I'm barely going to get anything I want, but I am still going to show up at your effing meeting every day, and I'm going to represent my community, and you're going to hear my voice. And the rebels benefit from that, because if like one thing gets carved out that becomes legal, that would have been illegal, and the rebels were doing it anyway, that's one fewer thing they can ding you for if they decide they want to ding you. And I mean, that's something.
Sure.
Yeah. I think a lot of time the rebels think that the people who go into the room are not working for them too. And that if you really cared, you would just say F this whole thing. But if you say F this whole thing, then, you know, either you become Al Capone or eventually you get crushed.
Yeah. I mean, there's an inevitability to all this, but I will say that like all the people who denied the laws and made it much worse for people in Colorado and made the laws much shittier. Like all these dissenters and people who like didn't follow things and who like sprayed illegal pesticides and like who did all these like things and then the community found out about it. We got more laws because of them. So like, and maybe it's inevitable. Maybe somebody will always do that, but the dissenters just made it worse. Like we have more regulation. It costs more money to run a business. It costs more money to do legal cannabis because of their opinions and changes in what they did. So like, I understand where you're coming from, but at the same time, you can also fuck it up for everybody. Like, I don't know, like there are definitely regulations we would not have. And there are definitely opinions inspectors have that they would not have if they didn't walk into a room and find 5 gallons of myclobutanol that's known to give people cancer. Right. Like,
but let's bring it back to FPV. Are you saying that the people who are flying irresponsibly are effing it up they're making the regulations worse? Is that your opinion?
But it's also inevitable because someone will do it. Like, that's sort of what I'm saying.
There's always going to be some jackass out there.
Yeah, like saying it doesn't talk to anybody because nobody who cares is going to hear it, right? Like that's part of it too. Like that's part of what I say is like, it doesn't make sense to show a video of somebody doing dumb shit. All it's doing is publicizing dumb shit because anybody who's going to do the dumb stuff is going to do it anyway.
Right.
And they're not going to watch the video about you telling people not to do it. Like that's sort of where I'm at. But at the same time, it is a fact that those dissenters do sometimes make the laws worse. The question is like, I don't know. Again, like there's nothing you could do about it. Like, so you take the good, you take the bad, you take them both, and there you have the facts of life.
The facts of life. All right. Good discussion. I would love for more BVLOS things to be legal. The more things that are legal, the easier it is for me to pretend that I'm never breaking the law when I make videos.
True.
We'll have to bleep that last part out of the
out of
the replay.
Part of it is, one thing I'll just mention is I like to remind people is like, we don't see much enforcement based on videos. We see a lot of enforcement based on live streams or events that are seen in person or person's drones recorded, right? Because it's so much harder to prove a video. So
yeah, good. Yeah. I'll keep that in mind. Alrighty, next up, we have a new, is this news, Blunty? Oh my God, a new Avatar firmware release. Isn't there like a new Avatar firmware? You know, it seems like there's a new Avatar firmware every 3 days.
It seems like that. I think that's because they have like one other thing I kind of want to mention during this. They've been really pushing tester pilots, like really hard. Like I would say probably like I'm seeing about 2 a week for the last like probably 5-6 weeks of just like new pilots who are like, hey, I've been getting test firmware and I've been just talking with the developers and like, I don't know. To me, it's really cool to see a lot of that stuff going on. So I think that's part of why we think that's happening. So we're just hearing a lot of like rumbling about new firmwares and all these changes and stuff. And there are a bunch of updates, but we got another one today. We got a new firmware, 26.30.6, which adds a bunch of stuff. Basically, it adds one of the things.
Firmware update record. There we go.
As one of the things we complained about, which was you can brick your goggles if your update fails. So if you can get this one installed, then after this, your goggles won't brick in a broken update anymore. Yeah. This also adds 4x3 mode. A lot of people asking about that. A night vision, improved night mode, better picture quality and permeability, which they always have been doing. But there were a lot of good test results from some videos that were around this time. We don't know for sure what all pieces got applied to what, right? Yeah. And what tester firmware has like what in it and stuff. But we hope a lot of those upgrades have been applied to this firmware. But yeah, it's out there if you wanted to try it. So and now, to me, this is big because you can't break your goggles if you can get this on there, which definitely is a concern. So
and I want to thank I think it was Junis who told me about the dual boot structure that the Artisan chip has, and pointed out how silly it was that Walksnail wasn't using it, and that you even could brick the goggles. Because I was like, why doesn't DJI? And he's like, oh no, they should just be doing it this way. And then when I made the video about how to unbrick the goggles, I just basically parroted Junis and was like, why are you not doing this? And I banged my desk, and now they've done it. So that's good news. Thank you to them for being so responsive.
One thing I would say you can't complain about is Walksnail has been nothing but responsive.
Incredibly responsive.
They're talking to pilots constantly, and they've got test firmware out everywhere. I've got DMs all the time like, hey, I got this new firmware, and I saw these new updates, and we got videos from everybody, and just very active. Like, DJI is not going to change an update structure because you asked.
Right. They changed, you didn't used to be able to go back into an older firmware. There was something about the firmware naming. You had to rename the file.
Yes,
they got rid of that.
They just fixed that,
And they're constantly... And I do want to point out that one of the consequences of this... They only release a public firmware every 2-ish weeks, they say, is their goal, because they don't want to sort of exhaust the community with new firmware. And the other thing I've noticed is that the tester... They do put these tester firmwares out there, and they've got a ton of test pilots, so in a way, the firmwares are still out there because the test pilots make videos about them. I do want to give a sort of a PSA, if you will, which is that a lot of times the unreleased firmware has bugs or is worse. And everybody's excited. In fact, I released a video about an unreleased firmware because people were telling me, oh, it's so good, it's so much better. And I was like, okay, well, let's put a video out about it. But if you're watching people who are putting out videos about firmware, you should definitely take note of whether it's a release firmware, in which case you have every right to expect it to be better than what came before it, or if it's an unreleased firmware, in which case a lot of times it's 2 steps back and 3 steps forward.
Well, for what we know, like I know the FPV WTF guys have been digging in, there's a bunch of parameters that they're changing to do a lot of the, just like literally some of the stuff is in a config file sort of thing. And you're just changing like, what is the setting on this and how long do you wait on this and stuff. And I think that's part of the Artisan chipset. A lot of those tweakable parameters are. So I think part of that test firmware is them just going like, okay, let's change these numbers to this and then send this out to a bunch of people. And then what happened when they flew this? And then, okay, so now we have this data from this data point, and let's change the number to this, and let's send this out, and which is good. That's the whole idea here, right?
I mean, some people would say that should have all been done before the product released, but we are where we are. I have not tried 2630.6 yet, actually. The one that I tried was, I think, in the 25s, and it felt like a step forward. Still wasn't as good as DJI, and the camera was super dark, which I think they seem to have fixed from the videos I've seen about 2630.6. But they're going to keep trying, man. They're going to keep trying, and I feel like if they keep trying, eventually they're going to get there. How could they not, right? But they're going to keep trying.
Seems overall, we saw some back and forth a little bit, but it seems overall some large improvements, like through the tester firmware and through the feedback from people who've been trying goggles and stuff. So, I think I would expect, as long as they continue to do this support, as long as they're continuing to be so communicative, which I imagine they'll do because they want to continue to sell the hardware, that they'll, that we'll see continual improvements and eventually, hopefully they're like tweaking 1% instead of tweaking 10%, right? That's the idea.
Big swing. We're seeing a lot of big swings. The big question that I think everybody has to ask themselves is, why would you spend $600 for the Fat Shark goggles when you could get a set of DJI V2s for $469?
Yeah, I think they dropped. I saw in a couple of places they dropped the Dominant or the Avatar goggles to $530.
Oh, interesting.
I think Banggood and a couple other places had that. But it wasn't like across the board, and it was hard to nail down. So but it's kind of interesting to see that. But still, $100 more to get into the Walksnail system over
and
the DJI.
The VTX is just so much. I mean, the system is so proven. In some future world, the 1080p from the Walksnail may be better than anything the DJI V2 can do, which caps out at, with the Vista at 720p. But the Vista it's so proven. and the hardware is so gosh dang practically indestructible. It just is. When they were dollar for dollar, I was like, well, you could go either way depending on if you love the future or if you want something reliable. But now that DJI is cheaper, it's a tough sell, I have to say.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see.
And with the new, it's going to be interesting to see the brackets once where everything lands. Like in 6 months, can you still buy RunCam units? And like, are we going to have literally a cheaper DJI bracket, and then we'll have a middle Walksnail bracket, and then we'll have a HD0 bracket, and then we'll have a DJI high-end bracket, and like, you kind of choose where you want to get in.
Because we know right now that RunCam says they're still going to provide Vistas. Well, they're not calling them Vistas, but that video transmitter
unit lights
through DJI. I will still call it a Vista till the day I die. I don't care. I mean, the question is, when will DJI pull the plug on that? Will it be 6 months? Will it be 3 years? It's not going to be never. People hear me talk about DJI pulling the plug on the Vista, and they're like, why are you such a fatalist? Why are you always shit talking? I'm like, they're not going to keep making it forever. It's just a question of when.
Yeah.
And
DJI is going to have a faster life cycle than most companies do. At least that's been their history with a lot of products.
Yeah. I feel like the DJI goggles V2 are a safe buy today, because even if DJI stopped making Vistas today, you'd still be able to buy them a year from now. Yeah, maybe at a little bit of an increased price.
I've mentioned before, but when all the firmware concerns happen and everybody's freaking out about like rollbacks and everything on the Vistas, I got emails from people who had 30 new unboxed Vistas. Like just a stack of Vistas. And like, should I take all these out of the box and update them? Like, this is a lot of Vistas to update. And I'm like, no, it's okay.
You're freaking out for nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I really think you're going to see a lot of that stuff. And a lot of those people, and a lot of people who have quads and quads and quads full of Vistas, are all going to want the new stuff, because there's a lot of these people who buy DJI goggles, and a lot of people who buy stacks of Air units and Vistas are the same people who are going to want to buy the brand new thing from DJI and get the new stuff. So
that's one of the reasons why I feel like the future of the V2 system is somewhat secure, even though we don't know how much longer DJI will keep making it, because those VTXs are damn near indestructible. There's a higher percentage of Vistas. If you take all the Vistas that were ever sold, and then you subtract out the Vistas that were destroyed in crashes and stuff, I'll bet there's more Vistas percentage-wise than there are Unifys. Ooh.
Interesting.
There's a shit ton of them out there just sitting in people's quads.
I've killed multiple analog VTXs, and I've never killed a Vista, so yeah.
So, who knows what the price will do. If DJI cuts it, the price will jump. Anybody who's still got them, but they're still going to be around. Alrighty. Well,
and there's a price ceiling. I mean, it's ridiculously high, but like $250 to $300 will be the ceiling, because there'll be a new Air unit to buy.
Yeah. So somehow we started out talking about the Avatar firmware, and we ended up talking about DJI. So I don't know how that happened. But that's how it goes. I'm sure it was the great big bag of cash DJI gave me before. Listen, you got to talk about our system. If only. I actually am not in the DJI bag of cash mailing list, sadly.
I was going to say, you're not even on the Avata list, so hopefully people don't think you're on the cash list.
I know. And Rotor Riot is. I hope I'm not getting them in trouble obviously they're a DJI retailer. They're on the list. And they also sell Walksnail, so,
Rotor Riot's really riding the line there, right? They're a big DJI retailer, but then they're like owned by the same company who owns...
I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I think if you're Drew, the day that the Walksnail announcement comes out, you've got to be checking your email to see if you get a message from DJI being like, we're never talking to you again. But then, like, apparently that email never came, and DJI was like, whatever.
Well, they don't want to lose. I'm sure Rotor Riot's a lot of sales. There was some figure I saw that was like, I think 15% of their stock is sales was DJI. That was like yeah, correct. That was like one of the forms that came out from one of the Red Cat findings. So
yeah, they sell a lot.
So
of
they
DJI.
Still have a lot. I mean, they sell a lot of DJI.
Well, there we go. You read the tea leaves. What does it mean that DJI didn't fire Rotor Riot and let them be a part of the Avatar release, even though their parent company? What does it mean? I don't know. You don't get to know.
If you type, yeah, I don't know. If you type Avatar on Rotor Riot, will Avata come up? That's what we'll have to find out.
All right. Next up, Mads Tech has done a deep dive, like a 30-plus minute long video about the RF behavior of the Walksnail, Avata, Fat Shark, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
System. and it is in fact a super long video. I watched a lot of it, and I actually summarized these key takeaways. Actually, I haven't seen his reply yet. One of them is that the goggles always transmit at the selected output power, regardless of if the VTX is powered on or not. Now, what does that mean, practically speaking, for people who own the system?
Well, that means that basically you don't want to power on your goggles if you don't have the antennas on them, which is
completely freaking backwards.
No set of goggles in the entire industry does this. Like even
Correct.
DJI does not power when you, So unfortunately, this is like, it's pretty ridiculous that they release a goggle like this. I think, like when I heard this,
there's got to be
surprised.
A reason.
Yeah,
I don't know what it is.
I mean, I don't think there's a reason. I think the reason is they don't look for handshake before they turn on a freaking SDR or something.
Well,
right?
here's the thing. I'm trying to think it over. What this means is that if you power up your quad, then your video transmitter is not overheating. It's not even transmitting at all. So you can power up your quad and work on you can plug in your Walksnail quad as long as your goggles are powered down, and you could plug it in you don't need a real pit. That's a plus.
Else you could power down your VTX, you just don't power it.
Just pull the plug.
Like you know how you could do that with not destroying the goggles? You don't plug in a battery. Like I understand what you're saying, but at the same time, like if I have my goggles on, they are being damaged, like without an antenna on them. But
no. That's not true. Confirmed.
Right.
So if you have your goggles on with no antenna, it's just like the DJI system. The amplifiers have protection built in. That was speculated by people who noticed that the RF system was identical, and confirmed by Walksnail. There is no damage done if you power up your goggles without the.
I don't. So you're saying that it broadcasts, but it doesn't matter because the RF stage is fine to support it dumping power without an antenna.
I don't know exactly how it works, but I know that this thing that our analog VTXs do, where if you power them up without an antenna, they burn themselves out. That is the cheapest, shittiest RF design made to the lowest cost. No actual professional RF equipment does that. It detects. Gotcha. I should roll that back. Maybe there's like powerful ham radio amplifiers that you have to be careful with, but like high-end consumer grade equipment knows that you're going to be an idiot and take your antenna off, and the amplifiers have built-in protection where they'll detect that scenario and then reduce their output power or whatever they need to do. And the Walksnail goggles have that. 100%.
Gotcha. Well, so my concern there was, like you said, reduce the output power. My concern was it says it broadcasts the selected output power regardless of the VTX powered on or not. So my concern was that like it doesn't know if there's an antenna or not, and it's just dumping power regardless.
I don't know. We'd have to look like with an analyzer. But my opinion is that if there's an antenna plugged in, then it broadcasts at the selected output power. If you have the antenna unplugged and it goes, oh shit, I'm about to burn myself out, it will then shut down to protect itself. So maybe you should just take your antenna off and then let it shut I don't know. We're speculating.
Okay.
But that's the first takeaway.
Well, if that's the case, then it doesn't really matter, right? Practically, it doesn't matter to anybody who's going to be using it.
It does matter because your antennas are going to be on. You're going to land your quad. You're going to unplug your quad, and then you're going to walk over to your friend, and you're not going to think about the fact that your goggles are powered up, and you're going to blast him with your antennas. You just don't think of your goggles that way. It's completely backwards.
I guess that's true. Yeah.
And it's why some people are having a bad experience with the system, I speculate, because they don't realize that their goggles are blasting their friend. They think that the quad is unplugged, so you're safe. And it causes problems. So that's number one takeaway. Number two, if you have standby mode enabled, it lowers the VTX output power when disarmed, but the goggles still stay at full power. So standby mode affects your VTX and keeps it from overheating, but not your goggles. And number three, the VTX is powered down completely when the goggles are powered down. So it is safe to plug your quad in when your goggles are off. These are the sort of three biggest takeaways if you don't want to go watch the whole 30-minute video, although you totally should, because, I mean, It's full of really interesting insights, and Madstech put a lot of work into it. So,
all right.
There you go. Weird, very weird.
Good information.
All right. Next up, we have got a community spotlight. Blunty, who are we focusing on this week?
It's been a while, but we're looking at a community spotlight by License to Drive, Ridwan Hughes. Some of you who've been around for a while know about these folding TPUs, standoff solutions that Ridwan makes. And this is another one he's just completed for the TBS Immortal T V2 antennas. So you can stack them on your standoffs if you need them. Basically, you just print it flat, and then you fold it right up on your antenna. And then, it's super easy to pop right on your standoffs.
Yeah, a lot of antenna holders print hollow. And so you either need a printer that is very, very good at bridging or very good at having large overhangs, or you need supports, which is a pain in the ass. Nobody does that because it's a pain in the ass to get out of these narrow things. And this is such an elegant solution. It prints flat on the table. Really, most printers, even if they're badly tuned, can probably do it. And then it just folds right over the antenna. It goes on your standoffs. It is brilliant. So impressed.
Yeah, and if you aren't familiar, he's got a bunch more stuff too. He has all kinds of little solutions. One of the ones that we've looked at before and has been very popular is the folding RX holders. Yeah. So it's a similar idea where you print it flat and then you fold it right over. So instead of wrap it in shrink wrap or shrink heat shrink or tape or whatever you would do, you just got a little folding piece that pops right on it.
Yep. Very clever. And again, just folds over, lets you get at the buttons. And he's got mounts. You can just have a little stick-on mount, or you can have a 20x20 to put on top of your Vista, 30x30 to put on top of your flight controller, you name it. And again, super easy to print. Just very thoughtful, very simple. And he's got a shitload of them. He's got every receiver in the freaking world. Well, probably not every, but a lot. Yeah, he's got a ton of antennas. It's just such a resource.
Yeah, very cool stuff. Same guy who made the TPU props.
Oh, look, I'm following him. How about that? Good for me. What, he made TPU props?
Remember we did that video where he made the TPU props? Scroll up there. Yeah. If you go up there on the right-hand side at the top there. I think that's right. Is that them? I put a link in the show notes to him for the video.
You can print TPU props for your tiny trainer and fly with them.
And they actually fly. Yeah.
All right, well, check that out if you're looking for any antenna mounts. The great thing about them is that they're fairly universal. Like if you have an oddball frame and you're like, Express LRS, happy model, antenna mount, my frame, and like nobody's made one. These things are pretty flexible and pretty universal, so you could probably make them work for just about anybody. All right. Thank you so much to Ridwan Hughes for that. Next up, we got a couple events that are coming up in the world.
So, first up, we got MultiGP Champs, which you can currently not buy a ticket to, but I felt like as a PSA almost, we need to get this out to people. God love MultiGP, but they cannot get information out to anybody. For some reason, this post was on by an admin in the MultiGP Facebook group, and there's still no other post about it. But on October the 18th, there's Champs is coming in Florida. I know a lot of people said they need like 3 months off heads up to get off work and stuff. So, obviously if you don't know, hopefully you know now and you can still get off and stuff. But tickets will be coming up soon enough. They're not for sale yet.
Championships 2022 champion. Yeah. If they got stuff about it on their website, like if we go to the front page of their site, this is that's already happened. Maybe update the front of your website to reflect Champs.
Maybe update anywhere except a single post by a single community member in a Facebook group. That's what I would say.
2022 championship.
There's people who are on the GQ who did not know the post was made. It seems a little rough, but
are the dates here?
No.
GQ race
not
dates.
Not that I saw.
Wow, they don't even have the dates on the GQ on the championships page.
It's the only place I could find any source for it whatsoever was that single post on the Facebook group.
All right, MultiGP, get your shit together with. I'm hardly one to talk. My website is constantly being out of date in many ways. But
yeah. But people need to get off of work. People need to have, be ready for stuff. So definitely anybody who's doing any event for FPV, especially if you have to travel across the country, definitely want to let people know ahead of time. So.
Yeah. Hey, if I show up, maybe there'll be so many people who didn't show up, they'll let me race.
Maybe.
And then I'll lose. All right, we got one more, and that is the World Drone Cup. That sounds exciting.
Yeah, I had never heard about this before, but I saw it posted somewhere.
Is it being held in 2016? Is this event being held in 2016? Because that's what these Hello, World Drone Cup. I'd like you to know that this I assume it's stock photography, or you asked your friend for a photo and he gave you a photo from his old album.
Maybe
these
they just haven't updated it in a long time.
Do not represent the state of the art.
Yeah. So last year, Evan Turner won. Marvin Snapper got second, and Killian Rousseau got third. So this year, there's the World Drone Cup is happening September 1st through the 4th.
Turkey. Yeah, I remember hearing about this race. Now I feel bad that I picked on their website. That's going to seem like I'm like racist or picking on Turkey.
But yeah, just in case you didn't know.
You're not going to touch that?
I'm not. It's better for everybody.
He's probably right. If this weren't my channel, I would probably get fired. You would be like, Bardwell, you can't say that shit during our stream. Eventually you would fire me. Somehow. All right. World Drone Cup.
There's this phrase, dig your own grave, I think. It's like, that's fun, right?
Yeah, why would you jump in the hole with me?
Yeah.
Right? You're just a guest here. Usually it's the guest who feels free to just cut loose. Because, like, what do you care?
Sure. I mean, I could do that, but...
You'd rather be the good cop.
Cutting loose for me is yelling at manufacturers, so...
That's true.
Yeah. That should work, right?
Are we going to do any of that today?
No, not today.
No? Got nobody to yell at today.
Well, we've got one company we're going to yell at. Don't worry.
Okay, I can't wait.
Yeah.
All right, next up, we have a little segment we call It's Barely News. Little news items that were not really enough to call news with a capital N, but we still thought you would want to know about them. And the first one is about Lugus Studios, makers of everybody's favorite simulator. Simulator? Was it our favorite simulator, Blunty? When we did the simulator?
I don't think so. It's a pretty good simulator. It's a simulator that many people respect and has been around for a while, and that gets constant updates.
Mm-hmm. It's a good simulator. It has my house in it.
And they put up a preview video, so maybe we can check this out real quick. This is their preview video they put out as a little teaser.
Play the sounds just in case they used copyrighted music or something.
So that's all we got.
That's it.
But to me, I think it's pretty obvious what that is.
Is it obvious? That looks like, that's the Martian copter. That's the Martian copter.
Yeah. So to me, this looks like DLC for Liftoff or some other project that's like fly on Mars and fly the Mars copter, right?
And people are going to say, you know what they're going to say about the physics? They're going to say it feels floaty. The gravity doesn't feel right. And we're like, finally, we got you. It's on Mars. The gravity is right. You can't tell us.
Nobody can argue. Yeah.
Finally, they realized that's how this happened. They had meetings and they were like, people keep saying the gravity doesn't feel right. How can we fix this? Finally, somebody was like, we set the simulator on Mars.
Is that the solution? You just need to make a game where you make up a fake planet and then you don't say the stats about, and you're like, this isn't Earth, so you're wrong.
Yeah. Somebody will do the math and be like, well, actually, the Martian atmosphere, the drag coefficient is incorrect. That's a good, Bobby Baggs, that's a good suggestion. They should do it with real-time latency.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's exciting, Lugus. Who knows what you're up to, but I'm excited to see it. Yeah. Next up. Oh God, the hour of this is why I did the news also, because it's only an hour.
Yeah,
I can make it.
You did good.
I'm running out.
I feel like feel like you're doing good. So
Yeah.
okay, two more.
Next
up, this is definitely barely news to me, but it's kind of cool. Somebody developed a neat little way to land on slanted roofs, so up to a 60-degree roof. This little shock absorber system they built.
That was way more dynamic than I expected.
Yeah,
I could watch this drone fall off this roof forever. I need the Benny Hill soundtrack.
Yeah, so they point out that, like, I think for our drones, maybe this isn't that useful, but I do think for commercial drones, especially expensive stuff that needs to land safely, it's not a bad idea. This is kind of cool. So basically the same foot system you would have anyway, but it's just used as the collapsible shock absorber. And then it's also a friction, to hang on the roof. So pretty neat.
And then what does it do? Like, what's the use case here? Surveillance?
It just resets when you fly away, right? So yeah, if you need to land anywhere on anything that's slanted, essentially, you could land there. I think that's kind of the idea behind it.
That's clever. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, somewhere out there's someone who wants to perch on a slanted roof and wait for a while, and I guess there's probably some uses for that. It's clever. It's reusable
pretty cool little thing.
Neat. Very neat. All right, that's pretty cool. And last up, we've got oh no, Blunty, oh no.
It's time to yell at DRL. Everybody excited?
Can I recap the last time we mentioned this? DRL.
Sure, let's do it.
DRL became partners with what's the name of the company? Do you remember the name? Algorand, a crypto company. And then they released this game, which was basically I just want to say, like, a lot of people don't know, like, they got a bunch of money from a partnership with Algorand, like millions of dollars. Good for them, I guess.
Yeah,
but
just like a lot of people don't know.
Wait. Did you say billion?
No, millions. But they're millions, they're actually partnered with, like, Algorand. It's not just like it's $100 million. It was $100 million deal.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a lot of money.
Yeah, so that's why you're seeing, just so you know, that's why you're seeing like that's why we're going to talk about how shitty this is, but they're kind of driving this. I think this is part of the deal.
Oh, when somebody gives you $100 million, they definitely expect you to put out.
Yeah, basically,
they released this
$20
game.
million a year, essentially. It's a 5-year deal, so yeah.
Wow. So that's why it's still happening and going to keep happening is what you're saying. They released this game, which was this drone racing game, and it was on brand. Like, the drones looked like the Racer 4, but it basically was you just are sort of flying down a hallway and you move left, right, up, down, or something. I remember we played it briefly.
Temple Run, essentially Temple Run. For anybody who's never played Temple Run, it's a Temple Run clone. Like, you have lanes and you're kind of moving back and forth in the lanes and dodging obstacles and collecting power-ups and stuff. And go ahead.
But what was really shitty about it was that they had a mechanism whereby you could compete with other people using real money. So you could lose real money.
Yeah, essentially you get into it far enough, and then it pops up a message, and it's like, all right, put in your credit card. And then you put in your credit card, and you can start gambling real money against other racers. And essentially it seemed like you were sort of like gambling through crypto. You were gambling against
somehow
other
there's
racers.
a crypto. As with all crypto things, eventually it turned into a ripoff. Oh, sorry. Did I insult your crypto people? Come at me. But it basically was like the money slurping characteristics of a gacha game without any of the dopamine producing slot machine behaviors.
Yes.
And we were like, what did you do, DRL? So what have they done now? They've done something else.
Yeah, it looks like they've added all the gacha game mechanics you're talking about.
Oh, cool.
And they've added more into the idea of being invested in this, because this is Project Drone Galaxy. So this doesn't have an official name yet. DRL has made this project powered by Algorand, the crypto blockchain. They want you to submit your ideas for the company, for the game. They don't even have a name for it.
I'm going to go with Droney McDrone Face.
If it was a vote, believe me, I would have already... I considered very heavily gathering everyone together and getting this name something ridiculous, but unfortunately it is not a vote. So it looks like the idea here is that you're going to spend money money to buy crypto to get an NFT of a racer. And then your NFT racer will race against other people's NFT racers, and you'll get items and rewards and levels for that racer. And then that racer will get better at racing, and then you'll compete with other racers. So, you're changing, trading, elevating your unique edge to win with your drone. Like basically, it's like a way to monetize even more the idea of an NFT because it's active in the game, right? This is something we're seeing in basically all the games that are doing this for real. Like real games are getting shit on really hard because it's ridiculous. Nobody cares about any of this in a game, right? But it seems like one thing I want to mention here is we talked about how the last one was a Temple Run clone. And we don't know yet, but the description here says, use gadgets and boosters to overcome obstacles. To me, that sounds a lot like another Temple Run clone. So I guess we'll see what happens when this comes out. But if there's not even a game here, there's nothing redeemable about this at all. Though I don't think regardless there's anything redeemable, right?
Here's what we have.
Yes, that's exactly what we have. We have a fox in a drone.
Do you think this fox is sexy? Would you pay money to be able to look at this fox every morning when you wake up and think sweet thoughts about her drone? I mean, Blunty, it's not like, why is this not like a butch macho fox? Oh no. Oh no. You know what we want. We could customize your drone. You see, you could design it.
Yeah.
Here's Valenti, I had a discussion with somebody in my YouTube comments. It was about niches in YouTube. And the gist of the conversation was that whatever niche you're in has a ceiling. So let's say that you're in the niche of FPV drones and you want to get a larger audience. Well, you could broaden your niche to drones in general, for example, and then you'll have a larger audience. But whatever your niche is, there's a ceiling. And as you get broader, eventually you end up in very broad content. But no matter how broad the content is, it'll still be limited by your niche. So, for example, a very broad niche is reality shows, okay? But a reality show about drones is going to it's going to have a larger ceiling than a different show about drones, a technical show about drones, but it's going to have a smaller ceiling than a more broad reality show. And I think we're going to see the same thing here, that what we have here is some kind of maybe it's gotcha mechanics, but ultimately it's about drones. And what you're going to see is that fewer people want to play a gotcha game about drones than want to play a gotcha game about wizards and dungeons and Final Fantasy characters. I just feel like there's a ceiling on how successful this can possibly be, and I don't know if it's hundreds of millions of dollars. I don't know, maybe it is, and I don't know what that means for the world.
I'm going to say the conversation in the room, whatever coked up crazy conversation they had, was something to the effect of like, people who play Candy Crush don't have to like candy, right? That's my imagination of what it's fine, man.
I mean, there's this. Great. I wonder how, because like I think this plan started 6-9 months ago, right? And Bitcoin was at 60,000 and crypto was soaring and everybody was going to the moon and they were all in the meeting and they were like, we're going to make a game about drones and NFTs and crypto and we're going to make $1 billion. And then they got close to finishing the game and they're about to launch this webpage and Bitcoin goes 18,000 and they're like, guys, we're going to the moon, right? Right, guys?
The thing is, if you hide it behind a drone, it doesn't matter the value of Bitcoin, right? That's.
Hey, I mean, Blunty, you're gonna own it. It's an NFT. That means you own it. What is it worth to you to own this specific shade of green? I mean, if you're gonna sell me on like NFT gotcha mechanics, why are all the drones identical? I need to see 10,000 randomly generated variations on this drone.
Because this is literally this is how far they got. Because that's why. Because this is how far they got. Because this is why. Submit your ideas for the name of the game via Discord. This is
also
how far
submit your ideas. Also, if you'd like to do all of the art for our game, submit your ideas.
Yep. They even say like, oh, if you make maps, you'll get royalties. It's like, build our game. If you make the game, you'll get part of this scam.
This scam has been done so much. This is like you go into a bar and it's 3 a.m. and there's one guy, he's got an iPad with a bunch of backing tracks and a looping pedal, and he's playing, old rock covers. This is that version of the NFT of the Apes Club scam, where you get somebody to make all the art, you sell the NFTs, you make a shitload of money, and then you bail. I don't think they're trying to bail. I think they're trying to make a product. But ultimately, this scam has been done so many times better.
I think they're trying to make a product. Don't be too nice. This mobile game was not developed to be a game. I will put money on that. This mobile game was developed to be a money sink. Also operates as a game. That would be. So let's not be too kind.
Oh, well, I am definitely going to make a video about it when it comes out. Right? We got to keep an eye on this when it comes out. I mean, I don't think anybody should be. NFTs are such a stupid way of accomplishing nothing other than sucking money out of your pocket and giving them to people who want to take your money. But
can I put my ape in a drone? Right? That's how this is supposed to work, right?
That's how it's supposed to work. I have a Bored Ape, and it's supposed to be, it's on the blockchain, so it can go between games. If I can't put a Bored Ape into this drone, everything about NFTs is a lie.
Yeah. I want to see a Bored Ape flying a drone in a 3-minute video that you release as an NFT. That's where this is going to end up.
I would release shitty mobile games for $100 million, but what I would not do, well, maybe I would. $100 million is a lot of money. I don't feel great about. I don't know. I guess I should.
Just don't put it on the blockchain. You just stop using the word fucking blockchain. This is the problem. And they're going to do it because they're with Algorand. But if you didn't use blockchain or NFT or any of this other bullshit, and you just took money in a gotcha game about drones, nobody would be complaining. That's the thing. Here.
I feel like I've let my disdain for NFTs and the many real NFT scams that have come out. I know people are like, not all NFT projects are scams. That is true. I feel like I've let that seep into the conversation a little bit, and I do want to say there is no indication that this is like an NFT pump and dump scam. This appears to just be a mobile game that is trying to. It's just a gotcha game scan, which isn't technically a scam.
I don't agree with that part.
No?
I don't agree with that part. When you put up a website that literally in multiple sections talk about tokens, earnable currency, NFT, blockchain, and is run by a company called Algorand that does blockchain that you have $20 million a year invested into you buy, and you don't even know the name of it, I don't agree.
You feel like
they're not making a game. They're making a platform for money. That I understand where you're coming from, but that's not how you would announce a gotcha game. You would show gameplay. You would show what's in it. You would show loot boxes. You would show pop-ups in the animations and how cool it is and how you're getting discounts with bundles. You wouldn't show freaking some bullshit about a competition because you're all on a blockchain and you're going to play to earn. And it's a totally different idea. So to me, this doesn't present as a gotcha game. If it is somehow just gotcha with a little bit of NFT, they did this totally wrong and they have screwed the pooch. But to me, this is the point of this is to be all over blockchain Twitter, all over NFT Twitter, to get all the people, all the crypto bros who care about investing into some stupid platform, who are going to dump money into this like they do into everything else because they're all excited to pump something else up and make some money off some other bros that they've got on their Twitter chain. Right?
That's the flip side of it. I feel like I'm hesitant to accuse this of being a scam because there is no actual evidence of anyone scamming, and I feel like it would be irresponsible. However, I do agree with you that in most cases, when there's this much crypto spooge all over something like this, that it turns out that the people's goal is to pump pump a coin, and then eventually either the coin collapses and maybe they get out or maybe they don't.
To me, the only possibility is that you've added extra bloat for no reason.
Right.
If you've got a good gotcha game under here.
The best case scenario is that this is a really good mobile gotcha game about drones that has crypto and NFTs added to it for no compelling reason. And that's why it smells like a scam, because all of the reasons you add crypto and NFTs to something like this, it turns out a lot of the time it's because it makes it easier for the creators to scam and to pump and dump and rug pull.
In a gotcha game, all players don't own one token. I mean, there's just a lot of things in here that point to a scam. I understand your hesitancy to call it out, but
right, we can't accuse it of being a scam. We don't have any evidence of that, and I definitely don't want to get sued for what the fuck ever. Not that they would do that, but
I'm gonna go out on a limb here. I'm gonna say there is no game that will release that has a focused marketing campaign on blockchain and NFT that will ever be something I care about.
That's what's suspicious.
That does not feel like a scam.
When a project releases and the first thing they say is we have crypto, we have blockchain, we have NFTs.
We don't know the name of the game, but we have a whole idea of what your token is.
We haven't even named the game.
Yeah.
But there's going to be tokens. It's like, okay, well, I can see. Yeah. All right. It's like if your waiter comes out and the very first thing he says is, just want to let you know there is absolutely no rat shit in any of our food. Our specialty is, we don't actually have a name for the specialty yet. If you'd like to participate in naming the specialty, you can put a
But it's really good.
That. It's going to be really good. You're going to own it.
Yeah. If you want to have input about it, like with ingredients or something, you could also probably let us know that. And then if you wanted to you pick the plating and design how you're going to lay it out, you could also do that if you wanted to. And you'll make a little money if we sell it to other people.
Matt 404 says, those who think everything's a scam regarding crypto don't get the digital economics. Matt, I'm not saying that everything crypto is a scam. I think that there are crypto products that aren't scams. But what I will say is that crypto is uniquely vulnerable to scams and ripoffs and fraud and criminal activity. Except it's not criminal activity because it's not regulated yet.
This is very easy. What is the benefit? There isn't one. Done. Oh, end of conversation. Bye.
Well, they would tell you that there is, but they're wrong.
It's bullshit.
They're wrong.
It's wrong.
Yeah, no,
it's
I agree.
100% wrong.
I 100%
You own it
agree.
the same way you own any other fucking digital asset in that game. It's fucking wrong.
And here's the thing, Blunty. And Matt, I'm not pointing a finger at you because I don't know you. But Blunty, in my experience, a lot of the people who argue the most vehemently don't actually understand how it works.
Yes.
They just are repeating.
Absolutely
Here's what
correct.
it is. They are bag holders who have invested a shitload of money, and now they have this enormous incentive to believe all of the bullshit they were sold. And then when you argue with them and say, well, actually, X, Y, and Z aren't true, and that's not how it works. Like, for example, an NFT, you don't own anything. It's just basically a URL pointing to a server somewhere, and what it points to can change. And they're like, no, that's not true. They told me I owned it. And I was like, well, you're wrong. Did you not know that? The people who argue the most in the support of it don't actually understand enough about it a lot of times, to defend it.
This game is not going to be any better because of crypto. The game is not going to be any better because of blockchain. This game is not going to be any better because of the cryptocurrency that's added into it. It is a marketing ploy to make money because they have $20 million invested per year by Algorand. It's not hard to figure that out
100%.
or suss this out by viewing this page. I just don't understand.
But
I get where you're coming from, but also look at what we're looking at. Take a step back. That's where I'm at with it. Yes, look at that fox.
I am. Hey, Raid Shadow Legends. Really popular gotcha game. Does it have any crypto? Nope.
I don't think
Just regular old credit card processing, baby.
And they make lots of money.
What's that other one? The other one that's even more popular now.
There's so many.
Anyway. Alrighty.
Fortnite.
Do they have crypto?
Nope.
No.
Roblox.
If any game was going to get into crypto, it would be Roblox. You gotta get that money from those 5-year-olds.
I think the problem is kids are involved, so it gets real wishy-washy, right?
Yeah. Diablo Immortal. No, that's not the one. There's one other one.
I'm really surprised that doesn't have crypto in it, to be honest with you.
It's pretty
feels like it should.
But that's the argument, Blunty. If a game like Diablo Immortal can be as scummy as it is and rip off money sucking as it is and doesn't benefit, do you think that if crypto would have made that game make them more money, they would have put crypto in it?
Right.
This is the biggest proof that crypto has no utility is that it is not in.
Well, part of it is perception. I'm going to be fair, but part of it is perception.
Genshin Impact. That's right, Kyle K.
But part of it is just that, like, you don't. It doesn't provide any benefit. Your gacha boxes work the same, right? Your loot boxes still all work without NFTs or crypto. The difference is, and what I said earlier is, the benefit DRL gets by this is they're all over the crypto Twitters. I saw it when I looked for this. If you type in Project Drone Galaxy in Twitter, guess who's reposting those? It's all crypto bros. It's all NFT people reposting it and saying, like, look at this new thing that's coming out. Look at what Algorand's doing and all this stuff, right? That's
it's just
the
a
press.
circle.
And you're building it for that press. That's the point of it.
Yeah.
So,
yep.
Yeah.
All right. PS Guardian says, y'all are talking in circles. Next. There is no next because that's the end of the stream. That's why we've just been babbling for 15 minutes. We finished the live stream 15 minutes ago, and we've just been amusing ourselves. But thank you for sticking around. We do have a couple of super chats to read. Ghost Branch FPV, thanks for 10 euros. Starting a Robitussin fund for JB. Thank you, man. I am feeling a little better. Of course, my doctor put me on a hero dose of prednisone. So, I mean, if that don't make you feel better, what does? And we'll see how I feel in 5 days when it wears off. J. Royd FPV, thanks for 17.99 euros. Pounds, I'm sorry. Pounds. Don't want to get that wrong. Will you make an updated best quad setup? I think my perfect freestyle build 2022 is still pretty freaking solid. And when I'm ready to update it, I certainly will. And Dwayne Dane, thank you for a $5 super chat. Developers on ArduPilot think Open Drone ID will be an approved OpenID option. I have heard that they think that, Dwayne Dane. At the end of the day, my understanding is that the FAA needs to approve any mechanism for compliance with remote ID. So you can build a thing that completely satisfies the ASTM standard or whatever the criteria are in every way, 100%. And if you submit it to the FAA and they go, I don't like it, then it's not. It doesn't make it legal. And go ahead.
I'm just going to say, my understanding is, like, nobody at the FAA is going to inspect it directly. So my understanding is the way it'll essentially work is you're going to say, I bought the ASTM standards. I wrote out how I applied them to everything that I did. I wrote out all my hardware, and I built my own means of compliance based off ASTM, and I'm going to submit that means of compliance. If it is like technically filling out all the requirements to me, I think it's just going to get approved. I don't like. Does that make sense? I don't think anybody's scrutinizing.
But they have a requirement that it be tamper resistant. You don't think they're going to evaluate the tamper resistance?
Through the ASTM standard that you're saying you follow. That's my point. You're submitting a document that covers all of that. You're saying literally in your document how you followed tamper evidence through ASTM means of compliance. Like
are they not gonna say
like cannabis?
This is open
to me. It's just.
Are they not going to say this is open source software that anyone can download and modify and flash to the device? This is not tamper resistant. Come back later.
Does it apply to ASTM? That's the question. That's my whole point. There's a whole document that covers all this. If you read through ASTM, does it fit into ASTM? Does their definition of tamper resistance in there cover or not cover it? I don't know.
Does the ASTM standard define tamper resistant?
Yes.
Oh. Well, somebody should frickin' pay $60 and look at the gosh dang document.
Yeah, but I don't think we're allowed to share that info. Like, I don't know how. Like, how?
You mean if you pay $60 for the ASTM standard,
share the document, right?
Can you talk about what's in it?
Well, could I summarize all the points as though you didn't need the doc? I mean, I don't know. There's a bunch of questions there, right? Like, how does all that work?
That's an interesting question.
I don't know how any of that works.
I'll say this. I assume that the ArduPilot developers are at least as smart as I am. And so if I think it wouldn't work and they think it does work, then that's at least a wash. And maybe they're smarter than me. In fact, probably they are. So maybe they're right. But that would be great if it's true.
I mean, it's very possible that there's like, it has to stay inside of an enclosure and has to be done this way and that way. And there's going to be all these things, and it has to come from a direct manufacturer. It can't come from like a user can't, like they could do their own means of compliance, but the amount of money it's going to take you and the amount of time and investment it's going to take you is not reasonable for a standard user. That's part of what Dave talked about. So, but yeah, my understanding is nobody there is going to have any clue what like tamper resistance actually means from a software level. Like nobody at the FAA is going to be trained on open source software to tell you like, hey, this is compliant or this isn't compliant or whatever. Just like cannabis, nobody in professional cannabis knows anything about testing. They don't have a fucking clue what a myclobutanol is. All they do is get recommendations from a group of labs that all get together and built standards, and they just follow those standards. They say, okay, you follow the standard? Cool.
Dwayne Dane points out that the ArduPilot flight controller has read-only memory, which can't be changed. And so perhaps that is sort of the loophole, if not a loophole, but...
I mean, like we'd have to read the standards, but couldn't you attach a device on top of the chip that takes two of the pins and pulls them in a different direction so you get different data out of the two pins? I mean, this is part of the question of like, that's why we're asking about tamper.
I mean, there will always be
ASTM,
a way to tamper with something that unless they pot the chip in epoxy so you don't have any physical access to it, there'll always be a way to tamper with it, and it's just where they draw the line. It feels to me like an open source project can't possibly be deemed to be tamper resistant, since modifying the code is the whole point. But
But don't you have the same access to open source and non-open source as long as you're looking at the hardware? Like, to me, what is the difference between knowing how the code works and doesn't if you don't have any access to the...
You can't...
what are you going to gain by having open information about the open source project versus information about a closed source project? Right?
Well, you can't modify the code if it's closed. If you only have access to the compiled binary on the chip,
but you can't modify the code anyway if it's tamper resistant. Like, how are you going to modify the code?
But let's say it was, my point is, let's say it was a Betaflight flight controller, because people are saying, well, couldn't Betaflight do this with ExpressLRS? ExpressLRS has a proof of concept.
But you could plug in a USB and flash it.
Well, right.
So it's never going to be tamper resistant.
Exactly.
So that's my point.
I agree.
So 100%. So we're on the same page there. So you would have to have something that's enclosed and not like flashable.
Exactly.
So it doesn't matter if it's open or not. That's my point, because it's not going to be flashable regardless. It doesn't matter what's on the chip.
I agree. Yeah. The point is not the ArduPilot thing. If the ArduPilot thing has ROM, read-only memory that can't be changed, then I agree it's plausible that you could put some code in there that would in some way be remote ID compliant. But then people are like, okay, well, can Betaflight do it? Can Crossfire do it? Can ExpressLRS do it? And I think if you have access to flash the hardware, then I don't think it could pass. All right. One more thing, which is a couple people have asked, will the DJI V2 goggles be forwards compatible with the new O3 Air unit? And I think we know that the answer to that is yes, because we know that the V2 goggles will work with the new Avata drone, which presumably has the O3 Air unit in it.
Well, I know because I saw paperwork from DJI that says it works.
Okay.
That's why I know.
People are also asking, will the new Goggles 2 be backwards compatible with the Vista and the old Air unit? Do we have an answer on that? Do we know that?
No idea.
We don't know.
I haven't heard anything from anywhere that seems any kind of credible, so I have no idea.
I agree. So I think that some people have... I'm not sure whether you and or I have reported a leak proposing that was true in the past. We cover a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I can tell you, I have not. Like, that's no verified leak source of any kind I've seen has had that opinion.
So,
and no official paperwork that I've seen has any kind, and it says anything like that. And like, I don't know. I mean, it's very possible, but also like if you consider like what we think will happen, right? There's a dual boot scenario. The V2 goggles have two boots. You have the old system and the new system, the FPV like DIY system and the new system. From what we understand, it makes perfect sense that the new side of the V2 goggles are what binds to the Avata, because that's what binds to the DJI Potato.
Right.
That's what will bind to the new Air unit. So if you consider that, if you just find all that to be true, then that means that mode will be the Goggles 2 mode, and that they would have to have built in a specific dual boot or found a way somehow, which they couldn't find before because they had to dual boot before. They couldn't figure this out on V2 goggles.
I mean, the V2 goggles had dual boot.
What I'm saying is, they had dual boot because they could not figure out how to make it work in one mode. So now we're imagining that in Goggles 2, they're adding a whole second dual boot mode just for old DIY units. Like, to me, that's a little bit of a stretch. Like, I don't expect that to happen. I hope it does. But it seems like that's going to be a lot of extra work for them for just adding an old DIY air unit that's like how many people compared to what they think their user base is. That's the way I look at it.
All I can say is DJI could surprise us on launch day. God knows they do that a lot. But at this time, if you're hoping to get the new goggles and have them work with all your old air units and Vistas, we have no evidence that that's going to happen.
The other thing I'll say is we know there are a lot of goggles too out in the wild, and nobody has reported that. So that seems a little odd to me.
But I would like to say that I don't remember which feature it was, but I remember with the V2 goggles release, there was a launch day firmware update that enabled a key feature that beta testers never saw. So I wouldn't put it past them to just keep that silent, and then to have a firmware update on launch day that unlocks it. And people are going to wonder if I'm like, wink, wink. I'm not saying that. I'm saying just because we haven't seen it doesn't mean that they won't just give it to us on one day with a snap of their fingers. But I do want to acknowledge that we haven't seen it. We haven't seen any evidence of it. I only point that out because I think I've seen people on Facebook saying, oh yeah, Bardwell said they were backwards compatible. And I've been like, did I say that?
I think my guess is it's confusion about the other direction. It's like, the new air units work with the V2 goggles. So.
All right, guys. That is going to do it for the FPV news. We went long today, but everybody stuck around. We have just about the same number of concurrent viewers that we did during the peak of the stream. So, yay. Thank you guys for sticking around, and thank you guys for coming out. We will see you again next week. Thank you, Blunty.
Yeah. Thanks a lot. Take it easy, guys.
Take it easy, everybody.